So today we meet again as we continue our exploration of the great teachings from Master Dwal Kul, ideas, illusions, and ideals. We have been told that illusions are really all that we know from our perspective where we live and move and have our being because of the veils that hinder our sight and make it difficult for us to see the real. The ideals we know are on the Buddhic plane, and the ideas come from the mind. And as energy follows thought, when those ideas are illusionary, that thought is transmitted into the lower vehicles. We'll look at impressions and work toward understanding how we build to the point that we can truly develop intuition, moving forward as we do as a discipleship group, endeavoring to dispel illusion. And you'll see spell come up, and I thought of that in relation to what we're doing, because humanity is under the spell of illusion. So we're integrating our understanding of the science of triangles, the science of the centers. And as we do this, we can make some steps together to achieve a level of spiritual discernment on the causal plane of the soul vehicle in the higher mind. And this may assist some in understanding and even beginning the path of initiation. This is a quote from Master DK that we've looked at so often. But to me, it really helps us focus on what our role is and what our service is. How can I, in my small sphere, be of service to the world? DK says, let me reply to these questions by pointing out that by thinking this teaching into the minds of the public, by expressing before our fellow men and women the teaching it imparts, and by a life lived in conforming with its teaching, your service, our service is very real. So, as we were reminded yesterday in the session on sound and silence, let the Om be heard right at the center of the group, proclaiming God is all. And to correctly sound the Om, the silent Om, in the head. And that silent Om sounding in the center of our group. And may we always intend to become a greater part of the new group of world servers as we sound this mantram daily. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Now let us listen into the center of the new group of world servers and sound that silent Om from the head center. Ben, would you read this for us, please?
We can do no more than thence a fraction of some wonderful whole, utterly beyond the reach of our consciousness, a whole that the highest angel or perfected being is but beginning to realize. When we recognize the fact that the average man is as yet fully conscious only on the physical plane, nearly conscious on the emotional plane, and only developing the consciousness of the mental plane, it is obvious that his comprehension of cosmic data can be but rudimentary. When we recognize the further fact that to be conscious on a plane and to have control on that plane are two very different conditions, it becomes apparent how remote is the possibility of our approximating more than the general trend of the cosmic scheme.
This, for me, brings together our entire process of beginning from the point we did several years ago with looking at and studying and contemplating each sign of the zodiac in relation to the new astrology and the teachings that Master Dwal Kul gave in esoteric astrology. And when I came back to this from Initiation Human and Solar, that first book really that was published, it described to me this whole process that we are all engaged in and confirmed the fact that our direct work to dissipate glamour and to dispel illusion is so vital. For so many are still only conscious on the emotional plane, and the consciousness in the mental plane is kama manasic. And we see that in everything that we encounter, whether it is the highest emotional ideal or the base Maya. So let us continue in this adventure together as we try to weave and pool the great teachings into an avenue and a path that we can follow, so that we move those who are part of the brain of the planetary deity, those who are still unconscious, can advance to a becoming aware and becoming conscious. For humanity, we are told, is in reality the brain of the planetary deity, and its many units being analogous to the brain cells in the human apparatus. So our goal is to awaken not only our brain cells as we travel along this path, but to assist others. and yet realize that in this fifth root race, fifth sub-race, with the goal of the achievement of knowledge and active intelligence, we are only just exposing the spell of illusion, this spell that is the trap, is the prison for humanity on our planet. Heike, would you read this for us, please?
Living is for all progression. All aggression is in the realm of consciousness, is naturally by a graded series of awakening, but would proceed much more gradually and cover a longer period of time than is the case under our present planetary conditions. This particular mode of developing the consciousness of the human family was initiated by the hierarchy during the Atlantean root race at the latter end of the fourth subrace, and will persist until the middle of the next round. At that time, the needed stimulus will have been imparted, and as 3/5 of the human family will then have esoterically set their feet upon the path, and a large percentage of them will then be in process of becoming the path itself, the more normal routine will again be resumed. The principle of becoming aware.
So let us do our part. From whatever stage we happen to be along the path, to recognize our own roots in the Atlantean root race and the progressions through the fifth root race as we now stand on the cusp, moving from the fifth subrace to the sixth subrace. At this time when there is this great opportunity and crisis, the ending of one civilization and the beginning of the next, in the sign Aquarius. So let us continuously become more and more aware. So often in our studies, one is apt to forget that it is not possible for any unit of consciousness within the planetary sphere of influence to conceive of conditions as they exist apart from the Earth, because that this small planet is inevitably, for that unit, each one of us, the very center of his known universe. And under the great illusion, the constellations with their rulers and with their prototypical counterparts revolve around the Earth. The first great illusion. When man has progressed further and consciousness is beginning to awaken to reality, the nature of this illusion will become apparent to him or her, and at present this is not possible. So, in our study of the science of relations, our first point of awakening is the fact that we are immersed in this great illusion of the planets revolving around the Earth. And through esoteric astrology and then the new astrology, we will come into greater consciousness of our part in moving beyond this particular planetary ring pass knot and that particular illusion. That ancient occult truism remains accurate. Consciousness is dependent upon its vehicle for expression, and both are dependent upon life and energy for existence. This remains an immutable law. So, in looking at illusion, one of the first things DK presents to us in esoteric astrology is that it is not, astrology is not related to an individual. Astrology is related to group. And we are just beginning to free ourselves of the focus that humanity has had in astrology, in focusing on the individual. An individual chart. DK tells us there will be new charts, there will be new astrology charts. And that's what we're trying to strip away in our study of the new astrology, is to strip away the threads that we've been tied to the old Atlantean and the old imagery, the old interpretations, and focus solely on the new interpretations. So in doing this, we do live and move and have our being within the aura of our planet. We do not exist without this planetary life. So let's explore together a little more about what the Tibetan teaches regarding the aura. We've reviewed this before, but Yvonne, would you be able to read this for us today?
Sure. As we know from our contemplative studies, the aura of any form of life can be defined as the quality of a sphere of radiatory activity. The aura is usually spoken of in terms of color and of light, due to the nature of the vision of the one who sees and the apparatus of response which is in use. Two words only describe an aura from the point of view of occult knowledge, and they are quality and sphere of influence. What the clairvoyant really contacts is an impression, which the mind rapidly translates into the symbology of color, whereas there is no color present. Seeing an aura, as it is called, is in reality a state of awareness. But the seer may in all sincerity believe that he has registered a color, a series of colors, or light, is entirely true in many cases. But what he has really recorded is the quality of a sphere of radiatory activity. This he does when his own individual sphere of radiatory activity is on the same nature and quality as that contacted.
So just the recognition on the part of every individual that what we're registering in our impressions is quality. what we're registering is the sphere of influence of the radiatory activity of an object, an environment, an individual, a teacher, a group, a nation. And with the advances in science, we're seeing images that are colorized, that are put in a form that can be understood by those who do not yet recognize that what we're dealing with is quality and sphere of influence. Doesn't mean that the colors that are reported or the impressions that are shared are wrong. It's just that we need to accept and receive those renderings of the impression with the knowledge that that impression is expressing a particular point of view regarding the quality and sphere of influence. And we've reviewed, of course, the sheaths of the brain, which are, think about the sheaths of the brain of the solar logos, which is humanity. Humanity, all of the neurons, the electrical impulses in this network of connectivity from atom to atom, from individual to individual in humanity, all expressing life, quality, and appearance. So we then think of the etheric physical body of humanity governing this instinct, this will to be, to survive, which we see in the quality and the sphere of influence of different groups and different nations, acting out of the lowest consciousness. The astral emotional functions of humanity, the pathways that have been created, the emotional responses of humanity to the environment, where you can discern the quality and the sphere of influence within different segments of humanity, even though the astral field one cannot really divide. It is a coherent, cohesive field, actually recorded as the Akasha. And for humanity, that desire to protect, the desire to be loved, the desire to control, and the aspirational desire to create, that needs to be lifted to that highest point of the astral field, emotional idealism. And then humanity, the mental, the brain that humanity is for the planetary logos, the functioning of that. All of this, the etheric physical, the astral, the concrete mental, operating as an illusory entity. When we think of the physical plane, where we're told that the human body is an illusion. The physical human body is an illusion. So we're dealing with these greater illusions that humanity has brought into the astral field as glamours, and the concrete thoughts that are in effect illusions. The illusion that we are singular as an individual. the lack of recognition that we are a diversity in a unity. And then we have the higher mind, where we attempt to work and be responsive to the higher ideals from the Buddhic plane and ideas, and those on the path of discipleship, endeavoring to be able to develop and shine the light of illumination from our spiritual vibratory essence. So here we have our workplace, our field of endeavor. And this is a reminder again, we've covered this before, but there are 3 types of auras that can be discerned when added to the energy of prana. And we have these as individuals, we have these as groups, and we have these as nations, and we have these as humanity. The triplicity, the health aura, essentially that physical aura, the astral aura, the dominating factor. It's extensive and controlling for humanity. The mental aura, though it develops rapidly, those of us as disciples, when we take our own development consciously in hand, and once polarization of the personality is on the mental plane, the mental aura develops rapidly. And this is the aura that we are endeavoring to develop as a group. The time will eventually come when we speculate this will be between the 3rd and 4th initiations. The mental aura will obliterate the emotional or astral aura. And then the soul quality of love will create a substitute so that the needed sensitivity does not entirely disappear, but is of a higher and far more accurate nature. So in effect, in our work to dissipate glamour, first as individuals, and then as we move forward, as we will, to dissipate group glamour and eventually world glamour, we are working in this field, which will eventually yield the accomplishment of that obliteration of the emotional astral aura, and the soul quality will emerge. So the aura of the astral field doesn't disappear entirely, but it becomes this higher and more accurate field of endeavor. So this aura is in reality indicative of the subject's centers. When we look at an individual, when we look at a group, when we look at a community, we look at a group that identifies itself along some line. You can take any field of expertise in on the mental plane, and the aura of that group is indicative of the centers. So think of a group that you are affiliated with at this time, any group. And think of the centers within that group. 5 centers within a group generally are active. In this, the 5th root race, the 5th subrace. So think of those 5 centers. The head center, the 5-pointed star of that group that it is moving to attain, then just pause and sense the quality of a particular center within that group. And then think of that quality as the sphere of radiation, the instrument of service, and receive an impression of the purity of that radiation, the extent of the radiation into the field of activity. What is being cultivated by this group? And then one would be able to seek out and actually observe the effect of that group upon a wider community or the environment in which that group seeks to impress and to achieve a level of service. So within this observation, one should be able to identify the virtue the group is intending and what virtue needs to be developed. And thus see the glamour that the group may dissipate to further their service. So we're using clairvoyance, seeking impressions to guide our work. As DK says, in this threefold aura, or more correctly, the fourfold, if we count the etheric vehicle, every individual lives and moves and has their being. So what does that mean for us as group members? That group, when we enter, we're becoming a part of a subjective service. And within that, on a higher level, this living vital aura, which for an individual is the recording agent of all impressions, both objective and subjective. In group formation, this is occurring on a higher level, higher clairvoyance. This is the level from which we can begin to develop mental telepathy. The aura is the agent of sensitive response, which the indwelling self has to control and use in order to register impression or to direct etheric or mental impression out into the world of men and women. So in identifying our own glamours, we use this ability, this clairvoyance on a higher level as the agent of sensitive response. And we note then, when we look at the astral field, the astral impression is purely selfish and individual. And that astral impression that we radiate out as individuals can affect the surroundings. And it's not directed as are the other energies registered. That's one thing to be really aware of in working with glamour. When you're the observer, when you're observing that astral aura or your kama manasic orientation, now look at that group. Can you discern, are you sensitive from the higher level, the higher clairvoyance, able to sense that astral aura of the group? And it is the aura which predominantly creates the effects which a person has upon their associates. So there's really good feedback that we can achieve by using the observer on the effect or impact that we have on a particular group, our associates. When we're working in physical proximity, when we're working as we are now, using physical mechanisms, and to move those impressions up to a higher level when we work in group, so that we are actually radiating that soul consciousness that is moving from the soul level to the mental plane and into the unified mind and brain. And recognize that these three auras are available to others to experience. It's not our words that produce reactions, even though we're supposed to embody reactions. They are supposed to embody our reactions and thinkings. But in reality, our words often are expressions of our desires, emotional, and often in group, kama manasic. So this effort to let all that is lower fall away. So can we answer DK's question? What is the aura? And how does it come to exist? And for us in our group work, particularly in relation to glamour and dispelling illusion, do we know the impact of our individual auras? Let's move on, because in this series, we're going to look at DK's instructions on how to do that. All of us, therefore, carry around with us a subjective mechanism which is a true and perfect picture of our peculiar point in evolution. It is the aura which a master watches. And this is a factor of major importance in the life of the disciple. Ben, will you read the rest of this, starting with the light of the soul?
The light of the soul within the aura and the condition of the various aspects of the aura indicate whether or not the disciple is nearing the path of discipleship. As the emotional reactions lessen and as the mental apparatus clarifies, the progress of the aspirant can be exactly noted. I would have you distinguish carefully between the astral and the mental bodies and that which they emanate. The bodies so called are substantial in nature. The aura is essentially radiatory and extends from each substantial vehicle in every direction. This is a point which should be most carefully noted.
And the most important note here is that this is a master who is watching. So it is not for us to decide or determine where one might be in the many ones that we encounter, where they are on the path. But we can observe the subjective mechanism, the auras which they radiate and groups radiate, which indicate the true and perfect picture of that particular peculiar point in evolution. This, I think, is foundational to the fact that judgment is a glamour, or when one judges in any way, until one reaches mastership, adeptship, is not possible. It is really not possible for us to judge. The other interesting thing for us to note is that the Akashic record, that which the advanced disciple, the initiate, works with, which only is a trained seer, can dissociate that which is from their own aura and the aura of the planet, that which is happening in our world today. We cannot dissociate from it. But it is part of these Akashic records. And the adepts, with its hierarchical, pertaining to the work of the 12 creative hierarchies, which are the 12, they're all Davic, higher Davic hierarchies, and each one is ruled by a Raja Lord. And even our human hierarchy is Davic. DAK says that we are, in fact, Davic. And he describes us in his work as bisexual, which is an interesting term to use. But what it means is that we are Deva, and we are also that individualized purpose. So this Akashic record is this immense photographic film. Isn't that interesting? He says it's related to sight. It's related to that quality of clairvoyance and higher clairvoyance, and then true vision on the Atmic plane and Buddhic plane that registers all the desires and earth experiences of our planet. So therein we find all of the karma, the life experiences of every human being since time began. So this aggregation of thought forms of a comic nature based on desire of every human unit throughout time. And this is what is the great deception of the records, where people believe they can read the records and see the past without achieving adeptship and just recognizing that only a trained occultist can distinguish between actual experience in those astral pictures created by imagination and keen desire. So we keep that in mind as we work to try to establish higher clairvoyance. And this is the 7 creative hierarchies. This is what we live and move and have our being in, all of this Davic life. And we are here on the 10th, the 5th ray, the mental plane as the goal. The mental is what rules. And then when we move below, those are the lower devas. But each plane ruled by a Raja Lord and lords and rulers of each of the serried ranks of the Davic substance. We'll go into this in more depth later, but just to let you know that we are going to include information on the devas, the building devas, the lesser builders. And the point today to bring this forth is that when we look at where we are in Libra, this is the 3rd ray and the plane of the lesser builders, the triple flowers. And DK gives more about this. These devas are actually in triads, and this exists. This is the rulership of the Atmic plane. And they are more particularly the material form, which is actuated. And in their cohorts are the substance of matter, considering substance as that which lies back of matter. They are that which produces concretion and which gives form to the abstract. If you remember last week, we went into greater depth related to form. This is a very important acknowledgement, particularly as we try to reach into the hierarchical learning through this period of Libra at this point of transition in civilizations. And as we move together as a group, gathering what we can in a substantive form from our impressions of the Libra experience of finding balance and equilibrium. And the clue here is, from this point of view, the mental plane provides an interesting consideration. Its 3 higher subplanes, where our causal body lives on the 3rd subplane, and we try to move to the 2nd subplane. These are positive. And on that higher plane in the causal body, it's centralizing the positive force of the higher plane. That is what is happening in our causal body as we develop through those vortices. And this focusing of the positive effects, the negative substance of the 4 lower planes. That is the reason that we identify and work with the causal vehicle and the egoic lotus, because then we have this positive effect of on the negative substance of the 4 lower planes, and brings about the formation of these force centers on the causal levels. Those force centers being egoic groups in their various divisions. So this whole process that we work through on the path of probation, the path of discipleship, is all about this Davic connectivity into the force centers on the causal levels. For us, it is building and opening the egoic lotus, these vortices, through the hall of learning for most, and then the hall of wisdom. And that is the concretion of substance, or the building of the dense physical body of the egoic lotus. So if you can translate that for yourself, building this is building the brain of the planetary logos. That's the way I can individually interpret it at this time. And the reason that we are doing all this work of transmutation and purification and attempting to focus on the mental plane. Yvonne, would you read this for us, please?
Devas are on the evolutionary path, on the upward way. They are, as you know, the builders of the system, working in graded and serried ranks. Devas are to be found on the same rank as the planetary logi, and the rulers of the 5 planes of human evolution hold rank equal to that of a master of the 7th initiation. Others are equal in development along their own line to a master of the 5th initiation, and they work consciously and willingly with the masters of the occult hierarchy. They can be found on all the lesser grades down to the little building devas, who work practically unconsciously in their groups, building the many forms necessitated by the evolving life.
And we are told that we must obey our higher deva, the solar angel, and all of the higher devas. We must cooperate with those devas who are helping to build our causal consciousness. And we must command the lower, those working on the lower levels, the lower bodies. Heike, would you read this for us, please?
Dwayne Carpenter shares, the devas, as you know, respond to different types of sound, vibration, and colored hues. And when their ranks and grades are more fully understood, man will begin to wield tremendous power in the reconstruction of the planet and all of its inhabitants. This is one of the goals of the reappearance of the Christ, whose knowledge of the angelic and deva kingdoms can scientifically and safely raise the energies from below the diaphragm to the centers above, which is all done by different groups of devas, overshadowing and lifting the lower elemental substance up into the light.
This confirms again the need for us to pause as we move from studying the dissipation of glamour to the work of dispelling illusion, because we're actually working on the mental plane and trying to elevate our relationship with the three types of devas of fire, and to command those that can be commanded, to control them, to cooperate in building our thought forms, and then to obey the higher devas. It's also a reason that we've paused in the essential relations to build in our own substantive knowledge and thought related to the fifth essential relation, which is about the relation of the higher centers above the diaphragm to the lower centers. It's a great study, and we won't go into the greatest depth, but we will definitely keep this thought in mind, that it is in the process that is occurring and the out of the convocation that will occur in 2025, the hierarchy will make decisions, and the Christ and the masters will make decisions about the externalization of the hierarchy in the coming age. So this is really relevant to work that is happening, service that is occurring on all levels of our planetary being. Every word, differentiated or synthesized, affects the Deva kingdoms, and hence the form-building aspects of manifestation. No sound is ever made without producing a corresponding response in Deva substance and driving multitudes of tiny lives to take specific forms. These forms persist and carry out their functions just as long as the sound which caused them is prolonged, and the specific will energy of the one who initiated the sound is directed towards the living form. Pause here. The sound of your monad, the sound heard by the solar angel creating the form, that sound perpetuates the life as it ascends through each incarnation to eventually become one with the soul and one with the monad. You are the expression of that sound. This is equally true of a solar logos enunciating the AUM and thus producing a solar system, of a planetary logos sounding his planetary word and producing a planetary scheme, of an adept producing results for the helping of humanity on the physical plane. Note, it is an adept, one who has passed the fourth initiation, and of an ordinary human being who, in much differentiated, diversified speech, expresses an inner purpose or state of mind, and thus builds a form or vehicle in Deva substance. The majority of human beings as yet build unconsciously, and the form constructed is either of a beneficent or maleficent agency, according to the underlying motive or purpose of the man or woman, and will carry out the will that little personality will, as long as its term of being persists. Energy follows thought. So we endeavor always self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech, guiding us. We're at time to end. So the next time we meet, we'll begin here because this is our process of moving ourselves to the point and our groups to the point that our impressions can be of the highest nature based on the incoming ideals from the hierarchy and the adepts, and that the ideas that we formulate can be of the higher order. We'll look at the process through which this happens, through the third subplane and the second subplane, and look at the notion of what DK calls translation, and how we can make the auras the medium of light. And we'll look deeply at this secret of translation. And then we'll move into greater depth on what he tells us of idea and ideals and ideation. So let's close with this sloka from Heart in Agni Yoga. The process of conceiving ideas is deeply rooted in the foundation of being. Without ideation, there cannot be striving to knowledge or creation. How can a spirit create if it has not been persuaded to do so by ideation? How can a spirit speak about the highest principle if no ideation has been laid in the foundation of being? The values of the spirit are distinguished according to this criterion. Without ideation, this manifestation would be nothing, nothing more than the dance of a skeleton. But as you see, a balm is now needed to heal the putrefying portions of humankind. Let us be that balm. So this coming week, take some time to sound this mantra, to find the highest point of light in the head center that sounds the silent Om. Heike, would you sound this for us?
I am a point of light within a greater light. I am a strand of loving energy within the stream of love divine. I am a point of sacrificial fire, focused within the fiery will of God, and thus I stand. I am a way by which men may achieve. I am a source of strength, enabling them to stand. I am a beam of light shining upon their way, and thus I stand. And standing thus, revolve and tread this way the ways of men, and know the ways of God, and thus I stand.